This is the fourth of our free 2-hour sessions related to structured on-the-job training, which is an important topic in itself, and also related topics as well. And as I say, we've spread these out. We have another session coming up in May 27th, and you'll be finding out more information about that through LinkedIn and other sources. The May 27th workshop will be about understanding what is structured on the job training and also calculating the financial benefits of structured on the job training. And we will look at some of the case studies and the process that we use to be able to do that. So thank you very much for coming. We have about 70 or so people registered, but I know that because of the recording, sometimes people don't always attend or they have other things going on. Good morning, Chris. Good morning to you in Mississippi, I believe. Is that correct?
Yes, I'm in Northeast Mississippi.
Okay, thank you very much. Today's program is on apprenticeship programs in SiTUATE, and I'm very pleased to have this opportunity to do the session today. And our plan for the workshop is very simple. I'd like to say a few comments about apprenticeships and talk about SiTUATE and apprenticeships. I want to warn you or assure you that this is not a sales presentation in any sense of the word. It's just really an awareness building session. But we do want to share with you what we have done with the platform called SiTUATE, as it is the digital version of structured on the job training. And we know that because apprenticeships is such a very important topic globally right now, I'm sure we will have plenty of time for questions and discussion at the end. If you do have a comment or question to make, please use the chat. I'm fairly skilled at being able to sometimes talk, look at the screen, explain something, and then also respond to a chat question or a comment that you might have. So this is what we're going to have today. You know, in thinking about apprenticeships, our first agenda item here, all of us have been bombarded globally with the idea that there is a skills gap. And especially the skills gap seems to have emerged post-COVID. And this is a very important aspect for getting people back into the workplace and realizing that the workplace and the work has changed since many people were out. And so you can see just a very sample here that there's information from SHRM, the Society of Human Resource Management. There's an article, all of this information is free. That's an amazing amount of information that's available from the Brookings Institution, from McKinsey and Company, the large consulting firm. And then at the bottom is the Business Roundtable. All of these are talking about the skills gap that now exists. Some of this information, from my perspective anyway, is uncertain, you know, that it may be calling for information that we're not sure exactly exists in terms of a gap, and there's other reasons for the gap. But one thing it does do is it rings a bell. It creates a need for more people in the workforce to be trained and to be available. So there is this discussion about apprenticeships that all of us have seen in the literature, both print and discussions. And if you even talk to managers in organizations, they're talking about these. I just noticed in our Department of Labor here in the United States, there's a memorandum of agreement of understanding between the US and the country of Austria having to do with apprenticeships. So I believe the idea of apprenticeships, as you know, has become part of our discussion about how we are going to respond to the needs of societies and also the needs of organizations as well. By the way, this presentation is available, and so it's not a problem in terms of coming back and taking a look at this. Interesting, if you go into some of the places in a different store, I saw this at a hardware store here in the United States, but there is even posters, and this is a very sort of a informal poster encouraging people to sign up for an apprenticeship program. The IBEW that you can see there is the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers. And so they are looking for apprentices. So there's not only this issue of employers looking and concerned about a skills gap and the need for talent in their organization, but there's also this need for people to become more aware that apprenticeships are an avenue for them in terms of their ability to be productive in the workplace. So as I say, this is just a little teaser. And all of you who have been involved with this, I don't have to tell you anything more, but we have seen this information quite a bit, especially within the last year or so. Just a quick timeline. This is not meant to bore you to any extent, but you know, the idea of apprenticeships is a pretty old concept. Pretty much has started back in the 1500s with the guild system and in Germany, and even in our American history, some of our most famous people, George Washington was an apprentice surveyor. Benjamin Franklin was an apprentice printer to his brother, who was a master printer. And one of the people in our folklore in America, Paul Revere, he was a silversmith. All of these people were apprentices. But from a more contemporary perspective, we know that there has been government has become involved. The state of Wisconsin was the first state that registered apprentices. In the 1930s, during our depression, the global depression, we had the National Apprenticeship Act, and that's when ONET, or its predecessor, came about during that time. And you can see the remaining parts of that as well. So we can see that hockey. So we can see that there has been, from an American perspective, and I don't think I need to worry about from a global perspective, because every country parallels the same interest from a legislative perspective as well. In the United States, apprenticeships are more or less guided by an Office of Apprenticeships within the Employment and Training Administration. For some of you, this is not very much new news, but I thought I would just share their definition of what an apprenticeship was: an industry-driven, high-quality career pathway where employers can develop and prepare their future workforce, and individuals can obtain paid work experience, classroom instruction, and a nationally recognized portable credential. And I think that's really kind of a unique aspect. The more I talk to people about what apprenticeships are, it's amazing. Very few people really understand apprenticeship system that we have unless they are somehow involved in it, either their children or a friend of theirs or something like that. It's interesting, I think, from a global perspective, that apprenticeships have basically 4 stakeholders, and it may be, these are very broad categories. In most every country, there is a registering agency. In the United States, it's not as simple as one might think. As many of you know, that the U.S. Department of Labor Office of Apprenticeships, they are a registering agency so that it meets certain criteria. But some states also have the authority to register apprenticeships as well. So at some point, one of the stakeholders is always going to be some oversight, some governing or registering agency that does this. It could be also a trade union, could be a registering agency as well in the United States. Other countries where their workforce development systems are a little bit more centralized, many countries in Asia, for example, Korea, Malaysia, Thailand, they have a more centralized approach. Malaysia, I said Malaysia, they have a more centralized approach to having what is the registering agency involved. Another stakeholder in our system is the intermediary, and that is a broad topic of discussion because the intermediaries are community colleges. As some of you may know, they could be public entities for profit, which is fine, or they could be nonprofit entities. But these are the people who recruit, set up programs, ensure that apprenticeship programs meet or even guide a program, an apprenticeship system through its approval through the registering agency. The intermediaries are, in a sense, the drivers for a lot of things that go on in our system here. And Blaine is telling me on the chat here that the Canadian provinces are decentralized as well. This reminds me a lot of times, if I can just share a personal story, when I was a faculty member at Ohio State University, for several years, I served as the director for a pretty well-known center there called the Center on Education and Training for Employment. And as the director of the center, I used to receive many requests from people overseas that they would like to come and be a visiting scholar at the center, which was fine. We invited many people to come and stay with us. And they would tell me that they wanted to come and study the American workforce development system. Well, whenever I received an email like that, I used to show it to my colleagues and we would laugh a little bit or chuckle because there is no unified United States workforce development system. And I can see, Chris, you're smiling a little bit like that now too, because I think you're on the front lines of understanding those issues. So what becomes surprising for many people is how well the American system works in spite of itself. Every state has authority to do much of what it wants to do in terms of apprenticeships, vocational training, TVET issues, and things like that. But again, the intermediary is probably the largest, is the driver for apprenticeships because they become, either they are part of the community college system or they are partnering with community colleges or they were partnering with other agencies and things like that. So some of you listening may be part of a intermediary organization as well. And then of course, there's the employer. The employer is the organization that is a participating partner to receive the apprentice and to provide the training for what is called the on-the-job learning. And we'll talk a little bit more about the employer. And then finally, obviously, is the apprentice. And the apprentice could be a young person, but it's also people returning to the workplace as well. So age is not an issue. Who they are does not seem to be an issue anymore. The kind of the prototypical apprentice of the past, I don't think works anymore because it could be anybody that wants to increase their ability to be productive in the workplace, in the workforce. And some people might argue that maybe I should rearrange the boxes so that the apprentice is in the middle because they are, in fact, the focus, they're the customer. But this is just a representation of the various stakeholders, major stakeholders that we have in our apprenticeship systems. As all of you know, there are two major aspects of apprenticeship programs. Apprenticeship programs have the on-the-job learning aspect, and this is a term that's used by our Department of Labor. And then there's the related technical instruction that goes with the on-the-job learning. These are very interesting entities because these are the two components that are supposed to be working together to make sure that there's an effective outcome for the apprentice. On-the-job learning, obviously, is the training that occurs in the employer's workplace or in some other practice-based setting. And so it could be that the apprenticeship, the on-the-job learning could be in a lab, in some other setting, but most of the time we are asking employers to be a stakeholder in that. The related technical instruction, or RTI, some people refer to it as that, is the information that I believe is prerequisite or contextual knowledge and skills that usually should be learned before the on-the-job learning. And it's before COVID, most people referred to this information. Yes, Wilson, that it may be a phenomenon of, different parts of the world. In the West, in Europe and Asia, there are these intermediaries. But when we think about the on-the-job learning and the related technical instruction, these are the two components that presumably are the key components for the structure, and how you put these components together is pretty important. As you can see, the on-the-job learning relies upon another stakeholder, the employer. And as I was saying, before COVID, when there was mention of the related technical instruction, it was almost always classroom instruction. And today that may not be entirely the case anymore. As most of you know also, there are different types of apprenticeships that occur. As you can see from this one, this is a very popular, important apprenticeship program called the Cybersecurity Support Technician. But I'm looking at the bottom line there where it says it's competency-based or time-based or some hybrid of that. This is a real difficult issue for many people, for many intermediaries to have to address. The idea of competency-based or a time-based apprenticeship. From my understanding and my observation and my experience, always we think about competency-based as that there is a standard, an occupational standard, or a set of guidelines that identifies what that occupation is based on an occupational analysis. So that's a term that we discussed in a workshop last time, occupational analysis. And from my experience, this is something that is absolutely critical to have when you are doing a competency-based apprenticeship program. Competency-based apprenticeship programs are based more or less on expectations, a list of tasks that people have to complete. And then when that is completed, then there is the idea that you have completed the apprenticeship. So time is not an issue. Then, as you can see, time-based is with the assumption that if you have sufficiently engaged learners, trainees, they will have the opportunity to see as much as they can possibly see, the whole breadth of experience within that occupation. And so time within the context of a general set of learning expectations is the guiding perspective. One of the issues that I'm sure some of you have heard also is that the time-based makes sense, but it's very frustrating for employers because many times employers engage in an apprenticeship program with the understanding that they will be looking at these individuals as a future hiree. But when you have a time-based apprenticeship, it more or less drags out that learning experience. And sometimes employers, as you might expect, are impatient about that. The hybrid seems like people would be, that would appeal to a lot of situations where you have both the competency-based and the time-based. But the issue I see with that many times is that we're not ever sure which gets more emphasis, the time or the competencies. And so this is a large issue for many organizations, many apprenticeship programs. There is always the fear that if it's only competency-based, that there will be something missing. And some of that is addressed through some of the things that we're going to look at a little bit later on in this session. If you have any thoughts about this, the type of programs that your experience is, put it in the chat, or there'll be plenty of opportunity for discussion at the end as well. It's interesting to note from the Department of Labor what has happened in the last few years. And this is all public information. You can go and find this, but this is a terminology that they use. As you can see, the year 2020, there was a little small dip in terms of active apprenticeships, apprentices, and the number of completing, all because of COVID influence. But it'll be interesting to see now that things are becoming a little bit more relaxed, but maybe we have some economic issues globally that's going to maybe drive people into apprenticeships as well. What's interesting about this is that in spite of all this, is that we have a slight increase in the number of active programs, apprenticeships, and new programs, new apprenticeship programs, in spite of the number of people, apprentices actually going down just a little bit. And another quick look here is the idea of what do people study? The most occupation, the highest occupation, is a broad occupation in electrician. And you can see the construction trades in a general sense are the highest rated ones. It doesn't mean they're the fastest growing ones. It just means that's where most apprentices are applying for. Very interesting to see these. We've been involved, as I'm going to share with you in a minute, in the IT sector, and in some respects, this does not show up hardly at all in terms of what the Department of Labor reports. Well, before I make the transition, go ahead, James.
I was just wondering, was that the telecommunications technician?
Yes, but
you referenced?
Yeah, but the telecommunications technician, but there really isn't anything else on the list here that is representative of the IT, the tech apprenticeships that are now becoming so apparent right now. And that's what we're involved with right now, the tech apprenticeships. I'll share just a little bit.
Thank you, Ron.
Sure. In making the transition here, I've given you a little bit of information about apprenticeships, and I hope that there's nothing there that's new to you, because if you're working in the area of apprenticeships, this is something we all share this information, but I just wanted to make sure that there is some basic understanding and some shared understanding. I want to switch a little bit and share a little bit information about structured on-the-job training. Structured on-the-job training, as you can see on the left, is a cover of a book that I wrote in 2003, and obviously is still available in the marketplace. Represents my work since the 1980s, believe it or not, in doing research and also practice consulting on helping organizations and also national workforce development agencies implement structured on-the-job training. Later, 2019, I published a book on work analysis. That has to do with being able to do a job analysis, occupational analysis, understanding the difference between the two of them, task analysis, and all the other analysis techniques, even competency analysis, where we are documenting competencies, the characteristics of individuals that are for success. Structured on-the-job training is defined as the planned process of having an experienced employee And from an apprenticeship perspective, that might be the mentor. Train a novice employee, and that might be the apprentice, on a unit of work in the actual work setting or a setting that resembles the work setting. And so this has been my working definition of SOJT, structured on the job training, for a number of years. And I have to say that every time I have an opportunity, I teach graduate seminars on this topic as well. And the opportunity gives me a time to reflect on whether this definition still represents practice and still represents what's going on in the field. And more or less, it's true. It certainly represents the on-the-job learning component of apprenticeships. And over the years, structured on-the-job training has been used in a number of different situations as part of apprenticeship programs. And so that's where my first introduction to apprenticeships and designing apprenticeship programs came about. It's interesting when I reflect now about structured on the job training and SOJT, that much of the work that I did is derived from what happened during World War II. And some of you may know about this, maybe some of our participants from overseas do not, but during World War II in the United States, there was a very famous program called TWI, Training Within Industry. And that was a means by which the Department of Defense was able to qualify a vendor, a manufacturer of government needed material, all the way from airplanes to ships to clothing and even eyeglasses as well, to be able to skill the workforce so that we could make the things necessary during World War II. After World War II, not very much happened in terms of the idea of having a more planned or structured on-the-job training. As I said, in the 1980s, I picked that up and started to do work on that, doing research and also practice, which led to the book that you see there on the screen. But what's interesting about this is that we are now in a different situation. And it's that different situation that has given, I think, a greater opportunity to do more things. About a year and a half ago, I realized that traditional OJT, on-the-job learning, was not going to occur in the way that it had before. And we had to do something about it. And so with some partners that you're going to meet in just a minute from Columbus, Ohio, some IT partners, we've developed a platform called SiTUATE. And SiTUATE is the digital version of structured on-the-job training. But because it's a digital platform, it gives people more flexibility and more integrated features than just looking at face-to-face SOJT by itself. And I think that's why, as you'll see in just a minute, the SiTUATE platform and my interest has raised quite a bit in terms of understanding the possibility of using the platform with apprenticeships, especially in combining the on-the-job learning, the OJL part of it, with the related technical instruction part of it as well. As I mentioned just a minute ago, when I say we, SiTUATE, the company, is a partner with an organization called CompTIA. Those of you in the US may know of CompTIA. Those of you outside of the US can look for it on your browser. CompTIA is a membership organization for IT professionals. It's really for employers. And they have recently become interested in apprenticeships. They have provided training on IT, but now they have a commitment to providing apprenticeships in IT. And they have focused on these four: the tech support specialist, the networking support specialist, the very important cybersecurity support technician, and the IT project manager. What we are doing, first of all, I should mention that from these tech apprenticeships, these are now registered apprenticeships because there's an occupational standard and they're available for free. They're public domain. You can get them from CompTIA. And also as a registered apprenticeship, that means that people going into the apprenticeships have all the opportunities, the employers have all the benefits as well that we expect in a registered apprenticeship. These documents are what are called occupational. They are based on an occupational analysis, an understanding of these occupations from the perspective of multiple organizations, employers, and subject matter experts. As I mentioned, SiTUATE is involved with the tech support specialist. And what we've done is that we have created a demonstration platform so that people could see how an apprenticeship program could be developed for this particular occupation. Our other partner is an organization called TAG National. And TAG National is also an organization that serves the IT community, nonprofit organization. In just a minute, I'm going to turn this over to my colleague, and you're going to look at, yes, thank you, Chris, that you can get all of the standards on the DOL apprenticeship.gov. It's almost visited as much as ONET as much these days that people are looking at. When we have, I want to give you a preview of what you're going to see on the demonstration. But when we looked at the SiTUATE platform, and I'm telling you this information not from the perspective necessarily of making you, from a sales perspective anyhow, but I think these are issues of importance regardless of whatever you use as a means to deliver or to manage the apprenticeships. These are important issues that have to be addressed regardless. At some point, you have to have an occupational standard, which is based on an occupational analysis. And it just so happens that within SiTUATE, there's a way of doing that. There's a template for doing that. As we have found, that from the occupational standard, you need to adapt that standard to the employer's situation. An employer's situation would require a job analysis that is based on that occupational standard. Also within SiTUATE, and also in terms of the practice, is that there has to be some task analysis conducted to understand the training content, what it is that people should be able to do during the on-the-job learning. What we've been able to do with the SiTUATE platform is to integrate that task analysis for the preparation of training guides that people can use right away on the job. What we've also put in the SiTUATE is another feature, is something that we call the Apprentice Tracker, which combines the OJL, the on-the-job learning component, so in terms of the tasks that have to be learned, with also links and connections to the related technical instruction, the RTI. So in a sense, the apprentice is guided through the experience using this tracker. Now, the other part of what SiTUATE does, and has to be done by any organization, is it gives the ability to flexibly deliver the OJL, either in person or remotely. So if the apprentice and the mentor or trainer are in different locations, then it allows you to be connected in that way. Again, these are things that I think from developing any apprenticeship program, these are elements that have to be addressed. The next one there is having to make sure that your mentors in the employer situation are qualified. Do they have the ability to deliver the OGL effectively? And that's a part of SiTUATE as well. There's a train the trainer program that is part of that platform. As part of the platform as well, at the end of every training, at the end of learning a task and performing the task, there's a performance check. And the performance check is the ability for the mentor or a separate evaluator to observe or to download information from the apprentice to be evaluated and rated as whether they are complete or not complete. So it does provide that ability to and it even gives the ability to have multiple raters as well. So it could be the mentor, it could be a separate evaluator, it could be the instructor at a community college that also has the opportunity to view what the trainee has done. And so it gives you that flexibility. The other aspect that was never possible without a digital platform was that you're able, when people complete the performance check, it gets updated, that information gets updated into the training plan that the apprentice might have as part of the OJL. And I'm going to talk about that in just a minute. You can see the next one there. It prepares a critical crosswalk table. I'm going to finish here in just a minute, but there's one more thing that a couple more items here that need to be shared before I can share the demo with you. The first item to reinforce is the fact that while there are almost, I should say, all registered apprenticeships are derived and documented using an occupational analysis. I should define what an occupational analysis is. It's an analysis of a particular occupation based on the understandings of more than one employer, so that, excuse me, so that more than one employer has given input to the information on that. The problem, or the great thing about the occupational standard is that it is a way of saying this is what the occupation is. But we have to remember it does not apply to every employer. And that's why we believe that what has to be done is that the occupational standard has to be adapted to a job analysis. The job analysis is in the context of the employer situation. In that way, you can make sure the employer understands that this is meaningful and relevant to them. I've had many experiences, and I think this is it addresses a deeper issue, I think, about employer hesitancy to be involved in apprenticeship programs because sometimes they don't know what to teach. Well, they don't know exactly what information they should be responsible for. When they look at the occupational standard, it may not look exactly with what they do. And it is a little bit puzzling to them because either they have to think about changing their practice or they have to come up with something that may or may not be representative of that occupational standard. But our belief is that in order for the employer to accept the apprentice and be comfortable with the apprentice, that there needs to be the occupational standard must be adapted to that job analysis. And you can see the representation of the job analysis, duties and tasks and task components. But when you do that, you have to be careful about that to make sure that there's the continuing validity of the information that the employer is providing. And that's why on the SiTUATE platform, we've put in templates for 2 crosswalk tables. A crosswalk is a means of showing the relationships. And we think there's 2 important crosswalks that are important for apprenticeship programs to have. The first one is to show the relationship between the standard and the tasks that have come out of the job analysis. And I'll show you an example of that in just a minute. And the other one is having to show the relationship between the RTI, the related technical instruction, and the tasks. This is important from our perspective because what it shows the apprentice why they are going to a course related to some like mathematics or blueprint reading or something like that. How does that fit exactly in the tasks that they will be performing on the job? Here's an example of a crosswalk table that we've done for the IT occupation of tech support specialist. So you can see across the top are the competency topics from the Occupational Standard. And we did a job analysis in an employer situation of this job title. And so what you can do is that you can use the cells to both identify which tasks connect to the parts of the standard, and you can identify where they are missing as well, which ones might not be represented within that employer and may have to be addressed in some other way. So the first crosswalk table that we think about is connecting the standard and the tasks that are important. The second crosswalk table looks at the RTI and the tasks. Again, we think it's really important because RTI represents either prerequisite or contextual information that's critical for being able to perform in the job setting. And so being able to connect, and this would be a tool that even is useful for the apprentice to show the apprentice why it is that they are learning certain things. Like for example, you can see in this particular case, there's a course on the legal aspects of IT services. Well, where does that connect? That's a contextual piece of information for that apprentice, but what tasks are important to have that contextual information that they should know when they're performing that task on the job? So those are those two crosswalk tables that we believe, regardless of how a program develops these, we think these are pretty important. But it just so happens that you can do these within the context of the SiTUATE platform. I'm going to now turn the session over to my colleague, David Hoy. David is a VP with my partner. I'm going to stop my share. My partner who will provide a demonstration, a very quick demonstration of the platform and illustrate some of the things that we've talked about. Thank you very much. And then after Dave's done, then we'll have a chance for some discussion and comments and questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ron, and hello, everybody. It's good to speak with you today. What you're seeing now is my browser, obviously, and I'm in the SiTUATE platform. So this is the dashboard for SiTUATE. There are a couple of different interfaces for SiTUATE that I'll show you today. The first is the primary or administrative interface that would be used by the HR professionals, the training program designers, the people managing the apprenticeship program, et cetera, as they sort of prepare for the training and on-the-job learning programs, as well as the trainers themselves. The second interface is used by the apprentices or the learners or trainees, depending on your situation. So if we talk at a high level about this functionality, the first thing you notice is the dashboard. As with everything in SiTUATE, it's highly customizable. Here we have some examples of things that could be on the dashboard, right? There's There's a relevant video, there's some text-based announcements, there's some graphical reporting metrics, and some functionality items that can allow me to get into my training schedule or into the library and so forth. So again, customizable, but let's talk about the key functions in SiTUATE, and I'll just go sort of left or right on the tabs here. The first two tabs deal very much with preparing to manage the apprenticeship program, to conduct the training and learning. And as Ron described in his presentation, it very much involves preparing a thorough job and task analysis so that training guides can be created. Let's take a quick look. We'll stick with the tech support specialist that Ron was using in his presentation. So we've got a handful of samples here on our demo site. But if we look, we've applied the occupational standards to the job analysis for our fictional organization that we are here today. And we've got tech support specialists that are going to be going through an apprenticeship program. So we have completed our analysis on the job. You can see we've completed a form here. We had a group of people in our organization working on the analysis to reach agreement and make sure it's correct. And we've broken down the job of tech support specialist into a number of duties and tasks that are going to be performed when a person takes on this position in the organization. And the apprentices will be going through this learning and receiving the training on certain tasks. You can see, and let's just pop into the edit screen here momentarily. You know, as the documents are being designed and completed, it's a pretty simple input form. You can see where we've laid out the various duties there for the job. And then each duty, you're sort of spelling out the specific tasks. You can indicate which tasks are going to require training very simply. And let's just go ahead and get out of the input screen. But the input, I'm sorry, is very simple. And you know, at the end of it all, you wind up with a document that can be published into the library, right? The system has a library in it to contain all of the documentation for your various jobs and positions where you're going to be training. Again, the document itself is flexible and customizable on a customer by customer basis. Looks like I'm fighting a little bit of a bandwidth issue here, but you can see here for this demo site, we've designed the documents this way. Any particular customer utilizing SiTUATE can tweak the documents to be formatted differently, but you get the idea. It's a nicely formatted PDF that eventually lands in the library. Now, as you work sort of downstream from the job, you've got to then do a task analysis on each of the tasks, particularly those tasks that are going to require training and learning on the part of the apprentice. So again, there's another form here that is specific to the task, where you explain things like the rationale for the training, what resources are required, are there any prerequisites that required technical instruction that Ron was discussing in his presentation, and then what are the specific steps for the training for this task, and those can be spelled out in detail as well. So that what types of problem situations might you encounter, what are the actions you take in those situations, and so forth. So again, you wind up with a nice PDF document for that particular task that gets published into the library, and that task analysis drives the creation of your training guides. There are in SiTUATE separate versions of the training guide, one to be presented to the trainee and one for the trainer. They can be different because in the trainer's version of the guide, you have the ability to include trainer notes if you choose. And those trainer notes are obviously available in the PDF document. They're also available to pop up on screen. I'll show you that in a moment as well when you get to the actual training appointment. So that is sort of step one from the dashboard, is doing the work to organize and plan your training program for the apprentices. When it's done, the training guides are built and everything is stored, as I said, in the document library. If you've got multiple positions in your organization, for example, here we've got a commercial loan officer in this fictional company of ours, as well as the tech support specialist that we've been talking about. And so you have a folder created for each job, and in that folder, the job and task analysis documents are finalized and housed, and all of the training guides are there as well. So they're all just a click away in the library. Once that work is done, there is one other piece that Ron mentioned, and that is the Apprentice Tracker. Again, the organization can have their own templates created. We can provide basic standards, but in this example, we've started to put together sort of an outline of the steps that an apprentice should take to get ready for the program. And I'll show you what that looks like from the apprentice's perspective in a moment. But for any given task that you might assign to the apprentices, you have the ability to put in a description, to put in an external URL if they've got to go get resources from someplace else. And you've got the ability to even provide due dates and reminders to the apprentice as well, so that they, can be notified about needing to do that task if for some reason they're not logging in and using the interface. So this is where the Apprentice Tracker gets set up as well. So the first two guides, as I said, or the first two tabs are all about preparing for the training. The rest of the system helps you manage the actual training process for the apprentices. And the first concept here is we need people involved, right? The first little database we'll look at will be the actual trainers. These would be your experienced staff, ideally, that are going to be doing the task-based training for the apprentices. So on the trainers database, you have the ability to define a profile, capture some specific information about the trainers, including key fields like, do they have certain certifications? Which job tasks are they qualified to train for? And other types of information like that on the trainers. The other key component are the trainees or the apprentices. You've got a database of those folks as well. And on any given person, let's just say I put a new person in today, Sally, the support person. You have a profile as well where you can capture key information, maybe contact information, other data you might need for your organization. But the key field here is, what is this person's job title going to be? What are they training for? And in this case, it's tech support specialist. As soon as you attach that job title to this person, the system is smart enough to understand and create a training plan for them. So in this case, we know that Sally is going to learn to be a tech support specialist, and it'll produce a training plan based on all of those tasks defined against that job. And so it gives you a way to sort of measure and keep track of where Sally is as she works through the training plan. So as we do an actual training, the ratings and the comments when they complete the training for a task will fill in on this plan as well. I'll show you that in a moment. So with that as background, right, we have all of our training plan and an apprenticeship program worked out, and the documents are built and in the library. We've got our people that we need involved, the trainers and the trainees or apprentices are there. The last thing we need to do is schedule some training. And there's some samples set up here already. I've already got a training set up for Sally, the support person, right now. But let's just see how easy it is to set up a training session as well. So the first question is, who's the trainer going to be? What date is the training going to be? Which task will this training be for? We'll just pick something here. You can put in other fields, titles, and so forth. What is the purpose of the training? Training can be one-to-one or one-to-many, right? I could say, well, in this case, we're going to be training 3 people on this task. Where's it going to take place? Again, it could be in person, could be virtual. SiTUATE will accommodate both. If it's virtual, you have the choice of using the SiTUATE embedded video meeting solution, or you can use something of your own. If you're going to use Teams or Zoom or something else, that's fine also. And then the last thing to define is, what time is the training? And we'll just leave it at 8 a.m. And then finally, okay, now we've got our training set up for May the 6th on this task. Who are the people involved? Who's going to be the apprentices or the trainees that are going to collect this training? And I can add them in very quickly, send them an email about the training session so that it's on their calendar, and off we go. So it's pretty easy to schedule the training. Once the training is set up, if I sort of go back to the start here as the dashboard, and let's say I'm the trainer and I'm coming in, I know I've got a session today. I just go in and find my training meeting. Right, here it is, April 15th today. I'm Dave, and I am going to be training, you see down here below, Sally, and I see the task I'm training her on, but notice the pop-up. These are those notes for the trainer from the training document that you built. They will pop up if it's the day of the training and I am the assigned trainer. When I log in, it's going to pop up and show me my tips for training. But with that, you know, if we're going to do virtual training, I could simply hit the camera icon here, and you'll notice a new window pop up, and I'll be in the virtual meeting waiting for the apprentice to show up to receive the training. I'm going to shift gears dramatically now, and I've got another tab open here. I've already logged in as Sally, the apprentice or the trainee. You notice the interface is different for the trainees. They've got a lot less functionality. Obviously, they're not going to be generating or creating any of the documentation or doing any reports. Their primary purposes are twofold, really. Number one, learn to do this job, and number two, you know, be on time for my training appointments. And so you've got a dashboard, though. You can control the content in terms of what the apprentices or the trainees will see. Before we go into the training session, I want to just show you Apprentice Tracker also, how it looks from their perspective. So you may recall a few moments ago, I showed you all of the different tasks that you could set up. Really, when a template of tasks gets published to a certain subset of apprentices, they'll just be there in their dashboard. And, you know, there can even be certain tasks for just onboarding, right? Like you need to complete certain training for my organization, or you need to have, you know, a welcome video, whatever it might be. So you can have them complete certain tasks. When they've completed something, they simply mark it off, and you are able to track all of that progress through the system and understand that, you know, oh, 75% of our apprentices have already done this particular task, or this person hasn't completed any of their tasks. So it gives you the ability to, you know, to track all of that. The apprenticeship overview section here is just some examples of things that you could put into the Apprentice Tracker. You know, we went back to our CompTIA example, right? So maybe the apprentice needs to go learn something about their specific occupation. You can give them links to read about it in different places on the internet. In this case, you know, hey, you need to get some certifications. And again, we're just sort of sending them out with a click to the CompTIA website to get those certifications or read about them. So Apprentice Tracker is a great way to sort of organize the program for your apprentices, keep them on a good path. And also when they say, yes, I've done that, it gives you a way to track their progress through the program. Now let's again, Susan's a little late right now for her training meeting, so we better get in there. So you can see we've got a number of trainings scheduled for her already, but here's the one for today. And again, if I simply click into this training session, I can see who is my trainer, which task are we training for, and then what's the location of the training. And again, if it's in person, that's wonderful. If it's not, you know, and it's virtual, there's a button right here that would take the trainee into that same meeting that I was in a moment ago. You'll notice on the trainee side, we also give a lot more sort of hand-holding on the virtual meeting tool. And these types of things are available in SiTUATE as well, where you can just sort of do the various things in the system, and there's lots of great help built in as well. So with that, I won't take too much time on the virtual meeting tool that's built in, but as you could imagine, there's a microphone with mute, there's a camera that can be turned off and on. You have the ability to share screens in virtual training. The little footprints here are the guided walkthroughs that I was showing you a moment ago. And then of course, there's a panel where you can just do text chatting as well in the virtual meeting. Okay, we'll close that out. Now I'm going to go back to being the trainer. Let's say the training has completed. I just finished with Sally, the support person. This little icon here is going to allow me to rate her performance on that training session for that specific task. So when I click into there, the performance check knows that this session was for a certain task. In this case, it was that task. And, you know, I can complete and rate the performance of this person And I can simply say, yes, completed the steps just fine. I can put in whatever comments I wanted. Select the download tool. She did great. Install Microsoft 10. Well, needed a little help, maybe put a comment, took 2 tries, whatever comments you need to put in there. And at the end of all of it, let's give her a rating overall. Yes, Sally is qualified to do this particular task. And it will, again, if we wanted to take the time now, it would create, well, let's just go ahead and do it. It takes a moment to create the PDF, but it'll create a nice PDF document. And you'll see in a moment that it's going to store that on Sally's profile as a permanent record as well. So here comes the PDF that's being generated by SiTUATE. There we go. So, and again, documents are customizable in terms of format. You can see we did this in a specific way for our little fictional organization here in the demo site. But in this case, we've got a piece of paper there that could physically be signed by both the trainer and the trainee if you want to have that sort of paper file as well. But it's not necessary in SiTUATE. Again, we've got that database record for the trainee. And if we go to Sally's profile now, we're going to see on the performance checks tab, we're going to see not only that training plan that we looked at a few moments ago, but now here's a completed performance check for our session today, that the training that she just completed. As you would expect with any system that's this detailed, there are lots of reports available to you as well. Things like reaction surveys and feedback surveys. There are a number of different types of reports available as well, so that you can track training metrics and things of that nature. Let's just take a sample look at a report. So here's, oh, that's not the one I meant to click. Let's go pick something else. Sorry. This is an irrelevant report. It gives you the idea of the types of metrics that are available, but let's do something different. Training metrics, that would be better. Well, no, I'm sorry. I'm heading in the wrong place here. Bottom line, there are a lot of reports here, and I just, sorry, having a bad day, I guess, in terms of remembering usage, but some of the reports are just immediately generated. Some of them give you parameters like this to allow you to select certain criteria like date ranges and other subsets, and when you export, you get an Excel file. So lots of reporting available through the system as well. With that, I'll stop talking and see if there are any questions or any things that we should drill into more deeply.
Thanks, Dave. Maybe we can focus on if there's any questions about the platform itself and what people have seen, and if they require any clarifications. I know some of you might be interested in this. Chris, I'm wondering, Chris from the state of Mississippi in the US, I'm wondering if this has any relevance for the kinds of things, kind of issues that you deal with.
Yeah, I definitely see a lot of value and stuff for any of our apprenticeship sponsors. And in fact, the question I was going to type in was, I was wondering, does would the training guide load into the Schedule A work process schedule that's part of the registration standards?
Say that again. Ask
Okay.
that question again.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. When you generate the training guide,
Right.
is there any way that would load into the Schedule A work process schedule that has to be attached to the standards when you register a program?
Mm-hmm. Well, when you talk about the work process, you're talking about the administrative component that goes to the DOL. Is that right?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's basically,
Right.
it's the training guide.
Right. Right. Well, they really don't ask for a training guide per se. They ask for a topic or a title for it. They don't want to see the actual training. But obviously you could show them the training through our system. So here's an example that Dave's bringing up of a training guide, the trainee guide.
Mhm.
So
It is just a PDF. I don't know, Chris, are you asking specifically, can it be somehow integrated or merged with something else that you have to file?
Yes, yeah.
Okay.
And part of the documents that we have to file with Department of Labor, it's called a Schedule A work process schedule, which is basically, it's an outline of the RTI and the OJL.
mhm.
Well, this is nothing more than a PDF. Once SiTUATE, gets done with it and creates it, in the end, it's just a PDF that you could take out of the system and attach as supporting documentation for anything else that you have to submit.
But I think also you're asking the question whether or not the SiTUATE platform could somehow be integrated within the reporting platform that you use to go for the Department of Labor too. And I don't know how that could be done.
Yeah, I think it would take a lot of programming, I think, but
Yeah,
but all of the information is there. So if anybody was having to go through that process and stuff, I mean, they could take this document and just
right.
probably copy and paste the information into the
And
display.
Yeah,
Dave
and-
can show you that there's an archive, that you could have an archive that you could then save, export to some other file, outside of SiTUATE, and then use it in that way.
Okay.
Absolutely. Any of these completed documents could be downloaded and saved elsewhere. And again, I think we're just talking about data integration, Chris. So it's not out of the question. I think it takes cooperation on both sides. So we would have to work with somebody on the other end to do that level of integration, but it's certainly feasible given all the data flexibility built into SiTUATE.
Mhm.
But the work analysis, all of that that's highly useful. And so, because I work mostly with very small employers,
Mhm.
they don't know how to do this stuff. So,
Mhm.
So-
You're assuming that the larger employers do know, and
Yeah,
I'm not
really
sure,
good.
but they may have an engineer that they can ask to do some of that work.
Mhm. Yeah, some do, some don't.
Yeah, but to tell you the truth, we've done a lot of work with SMEs, small, medium-sized enterprises, in implementing structured on-the-job training. And a lot of this is not rocket science. It's, if you give them the template, if you give them the way of formatting everything, that's almost half the battle right there, because a lot of times they don't know how to start, how to put it together, and what it should look like.
Mhm.
So,
Yeah. Yeah, that's a
anyway.
lot of what I do.
Allow me,
Yeah.
Victor. Yes, this is Mohammed.
Yeah, go
I
ahead.
have hi, good morning.
Hi,
I have
hi,
opinion
Mohammed.
here. Hi, I have opinion here for SMEs. That's right. They don't have the time to do that form. But I'm as a training expert, I will not do that on behalf of them. I'm not subject matter expert. I can't explain what's going inside the task and what's the needs of finishing or completing that task. So this is very critical for the training expert when I'm dealing with the SMEs to do this on behalf of them. So I can give them the template or forms to fill it and upload it in the system. But I think this platform will be fit and will go will be proper for the medium companies. The medium companies, they have tasks and they have, let's say, some documents, and they have trainers, and they have small training management. Sometimes maybe it's one person, but that person can do the stuff.
Yes, that's true. And it's kind of interesting we're having this conversation about small and medium-sized enterprises, Chris, because the person who just made a comment is a colleague of mine coming to us from Saudi Arabia. And so the issues that you're dealing with in the state of Mississippi and workforce development issues, national workforce development issues in Saudi Arabia are a lot of times the same. You know, how do you find people to be able to do this? A lot of times what we've done is that we have provided that service to them so that it gets them a jump start to see what can be done and what should be done. And the other part of that is the intermediaries could be the service provider in this case too. And we've always, and when I lived in Ohio, we worked with community colleges to give them the skills to be able to do this with their clients in the non-credit side, to be able to work with the companies that they were working with and to have those skills to do that. So that's an critical part. Now we're just talking about who's going to do the data entry and put it together and things like that. But one other comment, Chris, is that if these are organizations that have quality management expectations like ISO or FDA or something like that, this having documented tasks, this is all part of what they have to do anyhow. There's an interesting comment from Ju Young about her organization is an intermediary. I'm not sure what other platforms there are, Ji Young, about OJT. We don't know of any other platform that actually prepares the training, analyzes the work, prepares the training materials, and gives you the ability to deliver all that in an integrated way. But we know that there's learning management systems that facilitate that, especially on the RTI side.
Generally speaking, I would say the way we integrate with a learning management system or other tool is through the Apprentice Tracker. If I can show that again for just a moment. What we've had customers do is put the links here, you know, again, they use the Apprentice Tracker as sort of a roadmap. These are the things you should do. And then it gives them links to go into the learning management system and get the correct information and training or knowledge.
Yeah, one of the things about the Apprentice Tracker that I like is that it will not allow the apprentice to engage in the OJL until they've completed what have been identified as the prerequisites, so that it makes sure that the RTI, the related technical instruction, is completed first and documented before they're allowed to move forward. And that's really, in essence, the mastery competency-based perspective that we talked a little bit about at the beginning. Ju Young, did you have a comment that you wanted to share?
Yeah, I mean, in terms of some platform that our partners are using, I don't think it's like nearly as sophisticated like this, but I know some large companies, they have something that they can at least kind of track like who is assigned to train who, you know, the kind of little more kind of simple features. Yeah. So
Right.
Yeah, but yeah, and realistically, it's kind of hard for us to make kind of switches, but if this can be integrated to whatever they already have, then yeah, it's a little bit easier adoption.
Yeah, I'll let Dave respond to that in terms of.
Yeah, I think, again, data can be integrated. Systems integration is much more difficult, right? We would have to work with the people on the other end to, if we were going to truly try and hook the systems up together versus just passing data back and forth. Data integration is pretty easy.
Yeah, I know you guys showed how, like, because like we are intermediary and then also sponsor, we provide RTI in apprenticeship training. So you showed some features as an intermediary, what kind of things can be done, what kind of things can be tracked within SiTUATE. But it's, yeah, like apprenticeship tracker. But is there anything else that we could use in part of like, I guess, monitoring and kind of observing and any other kind of capacity? If we could,
Right.
yeah.
Well, the other part of, I don't think we showed that, but another part of when we look at the apprentice or the trainees in the spreadsheet that you can generate for each trainee, there's also a place where you can put in like test scores. So like if they could take the test conceivably on SiTUATE, they could do an RTI, they could go to a course, and then they could conceivably get the test for that on SiTUATE, and then that would be posted on SiTUATE. That's doing a little bit more than we had ever planned for SiTUATE. That's more of a learning management function. But what we're trying to do is figure out a way of integrating the RTI and the OJL to the extent possible. And what does not occur right now is, like you say, the RTI is available and can be documented. But what's missing from that, and I think you understand that from our previous discussions, is how to connect the RTI with the actual tasks that people are expected to perform and the training for those tasks. And so that's one of the aspects that the SiTUATE platform is trying to do. It's not something that's unique in a sense because people have to do it anyhow. And many times they do it manually to try to administer and manage all of that information. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, currently there's a disconnect in our organization too. We use Canvas right now for all the kind of RTI, and then in terms of like how this relate to actually like completing occupational like standards, and that's kind of being manually done on the just document and
right. So through the Apprentice Tracker, you could go to Canvas to access the courses that people have to have, or if they're going to view a video or go through a program or something like that. But the link could be embedded with an Apprentice Tracker, and then that way they could take a test for that information. It could be posted in their training plan on SiTUATE, and then that way they would be available and ready for the OGL part. OJL. Yeah.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you. That's helpful. Just trying to architect how things can all kind of fit together. Yeah.
Are there any other thoughts?
Ron, do you have anything else you need to share?
No, you can go out of that if you wish. Are there any other comments or questions that anybody has? Well, this was great from our perspective. We really appreciate the opportunity to share this information with you. And of course, if you have any other further questions or comments about or need for clarification, please don't hesitate to contact me at the email address. And also, if you wish, you can visit the website, which has some not only information about SOJT, but a lot of interesting blogs that I've written in the past several months about various issues related to both apprenticeships and employee training and structured on-the-job training. So please don't hesitate to do that. I just want to make tell you about the next. Thank you, Chris. It's nice to meet you. I know that we've interacted a little bit on LinkedIn, but I'm glad we got a chance to meet each other. maybe if there's a chance, we can have a chat sometime on Zoom, to see where your opportunities might be. From a personal perspective, Chris, I'm over in Georgia. This is
Okay.
where I live, so I'm fairly close. I'm in St. Simon's Island, so I'm fairly close to you right now, I guess. To some
Well, let's
extent.
see, we're about 4 hours from Atlanta, so what, another 2 hours to St. Simon's?
Yeah,
So
yeah, so not very far. Are you in, what city are you in?
I'm in the little town of Amory.
Okay,
It's
heard of that.
about 30 miles outside of Tupelo.
Okay, okay. Is that where your offices are, or that's where you are?
That's where my office is.
Okay.
I'm the only Mississippi Apprenticeship Program staffer that's not in Jackson at the
Okay,
state office.
okay. Very good. Well, I look forward maybe to having an opportunity to continue our chat and see how we might be able to work together. Next time on May 27th, this is a plug. Okay, it's a commercial plug, but we're not selling anything. It's another free workshop, but it's talking about, we did a very interesting survey that just was completed. And we still found out that there were people who were not quite sure the difference between planned or structured on-the-job training and unplanned or just OJT. And so we decided to have another workshop to explain again and share information about the difference between unstructured on-the-job training and structured on-the-job training. And whenever you talk about the differences between the two, you have to think about also what are the consequences in terms of the impacts and the results. And so in that workshop, we're also going to show examples and share with you the technique, the process to be able to calculate the financial benefits of doing, or the financial outcomes, I should say, from doing unstructured OJT and compared to structured on-the-job training. And this is important practice because it helps demonstrate to organizations, to managers, why it's important to make that investment, how you can document why it's important to make that investment in SOJT. So look forward to the possibility of some of you joining us. Thank you to all of you. This session will be available on YouTube and also, I think, also for through our website as well. I'm going to stay on as long as anybody would like to chat, but otherwise, thank you very much. And look forward to seeing you at a future program. Thanks, everybody.